Your Excellencies, friends of SID, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Society for International Development, it is a pleasure for me to welcome you to this launch of the State of East Africa Report 2012. My name is Arthur Muliro, and I'm the Deputy Managing Director of the Secretariat of the International Society for International Development in Rome, and also the Chief Executive of the Eastern Africa Regional Office. The Society for International Development, as some of you may know, is an institution that has a long history of trying to promote debate and dialogue on topical issues. Since its formation in 1957, SID has managed to extend its operations to different corners of the world, in virtually all continents, and through our members, who today number over 3,000, and our chapters, which are over 50 in some 45 countries. I think SID is a keen promoter of dialogue and is proud to be associated with individuals such as yourself who join us in promoting conversations on those topics that are important and topical to our development goals.
The East African community, I think, as we are all aware, and has been said oftentimes, is arguably Africa's most successful regional integration project. And we at SID are greatly honored and feel very proud to be associated with such a successful venture. The 5-member partnership is increasingly attracting attention from far and wide. Already, as we are aware, a number of countries neighboring this region have either applied to join or have indicated willingness to become members. It is also attracting attention from farther afield for its tremendous potential. It's not often those of us who are here, those of us who are citizens of East Africa, appreciate this. But I think, as you will see in the presentation that my colleagues will do later, as more and more of the international community actually pay greater attention to this region, I think many of us are beginning to wake up to the fact that this is not a region that just attracts others because of its sandy beaches and its great wildlife. There's a lot more going on in this region than just that. We are no longer just being seen as a tourist destination. There's a lot more in this region than just attracting tourists. A successful navigation of the region's future hinges on substantive collaboration among all stakeholders. The East African Community integration process is not a project for the political or, for that matter, the business class only. The integration is about us all. We all have a role to play in this. It's for us as citizens of East Africa, as well as our partners, who can make this integration work. Citizens of the region from all walks of life have a stake in it, and their voices must also be heard. The publication that we shall be launching today is part of efforts on the part of SID to try and contribute to these dialogues, to try and provide the knowledge, information that will be useful for people to have informed discussions. On our part, as the SID Regional Office, we commit ourselves to continue to play the role of a convener of critical dialogue on what the integration means for this region. SID will continue to create the spaces in which such dialogue will be conducted.
All our work is very much geared towards achieving East African integration, the East African dream of integration, and the treaty, and of course the East African Community's development strategy. We do that by working with a diverse set of actors, the private sector, governments, civil society, and also clearly the regional institution, the East African Community. And I must say I'm delighted to be here with Secretary General today. But our partnership with SID, we're very excited about at Trademark. It's really about supporting the development of these East Africa reports over the next few years to 2014. It's a follow-up to the reports that were done between 2006 and 2008, and we anticipate that this partnership will really help to inform civil society organisations and the private sector on opportunities for effective engagement with the regional integration process. As also will provide key institutions such as the East African Community with the facts and figures in national governments with relevant and timely data in order to help policy making. That's our partnership. But thinking about the report that's going to be presented to you, there's been a lot of progress in East Africa. Really, East Africa is booming, and as we sometimes say, the East African lion is beginning to roar. Trade is increasing, and investment is really coming up. I heard an article the other day saying that investment firms that don't have representation in East Africa aren't really anywhere in terms of global investment. I think as well, within the context, there is a general lack of knowledge around the benefits of regional integration across East Africa. And what we need is the sort of report that we're going to get today. Really intelligible data on regional integration that looks at long-term trends and thinks consistently about the issues at stake, and is a way of trying to engage with East African citizens. The dialogue is very important, and Aidan and the team will be talking about how East Africans can take charge of their own development. The private sector and civil society will play a key role in this whole process. We're quite excited because the report also talks about infrastructure, something at Trademark East Africa we work on a lot. We're investing around $120 million in the development of border posts and port infrastructure across the region. But infrastructure will be important to unlock the potential of East Africa's economic space. And let's face it, an efficient transport system that doesn't cost much, huge amount more than Europe and the US. I think at the moment the costs are around 70% higher than those regions. It's going to be critical to ensuring East African competitiveness, particularly faster border crossings and reduced red tape and harmonised systems.
The purpose of the report is really fourfold. One, to inform, provide as much data and as recent data as we can on a number of indicators. Two, to look at that data, to analyze its trends and to see what it might be showing. What are the surprises? What are the interesting things that are emerging that we may not have thought about? And when you connect some data with others and you look at what the picture is emerging, it can also be very interesting. We'll share some of those with you. The third one is, I think as Frank was mentioning as he was speaking here, to try and see how this sparks our imagination as to where this region could be in the future. And that future could be a very good and rosy one, or that future could be full of challenges if we don't really come to grips with what we're facing at the moment, if we don't understand where it is that we're starting from. And the fourth and very important point is that we hope this report will spark lots and lots and lots of conversations. Controversial ones, conversations about compromise, conversations about our own self-confidence, especially in dealing with the interest that is intensifying about the East African region. I think both Frank and Ali mentioned that. And we'd like to share some indicators of how that interest is actually manifesting itself in the region. So we want to start with sort of the big picture. And we've really looked at two things. As the theme of the report says, deepening integration and intensifying challenges. There are signs of policy convergence, and we'll tell you what that is. And infrastructure development has also improved through this coordinated efforts of member states to try and do a lot more regional infrastructure projects and not just national ones. So here's the trade. You can see this is the growth in regional trade, in global trade from the region. The green arrow is our exports to the world. The red arrow is our imports from the world. So by 2010, we imported about $26 billion worth of imports and exported about $11.1 billion to the rest of the world. The trade within East Africa has also doubled from 2.2 billion to 4.1 billion over a 5-year period since the customs union came into effect. But what is interesting, and this is perhaps one of the challenges, is that the proportion of our trade, total trade as a region, that we do with one another stays relatively small. We have just 21% of our total exports are actually exports to one another. And about 8 to 7% of our total imports are imports with one another. The rest is with the rest of the world. So this is something to think about. Intra-regional trade, how can that be boosted to tie ourselves together further? Then, we talk about trade. Then we looked at the numbers and tried to see who's sending what to which country. So we looked and thought interesting statistics are emerging here in terms of informal trade. Let me explain this table a little bit. If you look at Kenya reporting exports to Uganda, it was $657 million. That's what Kenya said we exported to Uganda. So what Uganda said they imported from Kenya was $549 million. So where's the difference? But if you add all of this up, you see the volume of what we call this informal trade went from about 300 million to about 500 million over a period of 5 years. Foreign direct investment has increased, went from 688 million to 1.7 billion in a 10-year period. But like I said, it's not just from outside the region, but within the region as well, there is a lot of activity. Now, the other thing that we're also doing in terms of integrating with the rest of the world is East Africans are going out of East Africa also to seek opportunities in the outside world. The golden color there, you can see are the Kenyans who seem to be wanting to leave and go off to, where are they going? To the United States here, and the OECD countries. So we calculated total remittances coming to 2.8 billion in 2010, up from 791 million in 2000 over this period. The regional projects, you've seen, those of you who drive between Arusha and Nairobi have seen this wonderful new road that's been put up as a regional project funded by the African Development Bank as part of their confidence in the fact that this is a very exciting region that needs to be connected much more and much more densely. 95% of the cargo is carried on our roads. So the rail system, in terms of carrying cargo, is really underperforming. But there's investment going into it. The Chinese, RVR, the Tazara, they're trying to revive the railway sector. But a lot of the cargo, all of that 25 billion in imports from the rest of the world is coming on our roads. The hints of policy convergence. When we looked at the numbers, we saw the increase in per capita healthcare spending. We saw a very good performance in terms of gross enrollment ratio for primary school enrollment. And when you look around, I think it's Uganda who started with universal primary education, and the other countries copied very quickly. Kenya, Tanzania, Rwanda, I think, has had it for a while. Burundi.
Intensifying challenges. What we found is poverty still remains a stubborn issue, with 53 million East Africans living under the poverty line. Achieving food security remains a chronic problem, as demonstrated by the drought last year that affected Kenya and Ethiopia and parts of most of Somalia. So mixed results in poverty. What we did is basically take baseline surveys of all the poverty incidents of all East African countries. And then we tried to cross-reference it with the most up-to-date poverty incidents. Most of them, the most recent was in Rwanda, and followed by Burundi. By 2030, East Africa will account for 40% of sub-Saharan Africa and a total population. Now, if the EAC tries to expand to include South Sudan, Sudan, Ethiopia, and the DRC, we will still account for 40% of the total sub-Saharan African population, but our political clout and economic clout will be unmatched. Now, what are the long-term implications? As Aidan mentioned, with respect to MDG 3, which is universal primary education, universal primary access to education, we're doing pretty well. All of them have achieved this MDG goal. Everyone has over 100% of gross enrollment rates. Things get very tricky when we start thinking about secondary education. We have a huge drop in each of the years between 2002 and 2009. I think only with Kenya with the highest, with 45% gross enrollment rates in secondary education. So what are the long-term effects about this? With the conjunction of having children who are malnourished, not going to secondary education, how does that affect the labor force? Maybe not in 5 years, but in 10, 20 years. Now, intensifying global interest. As I mentioned, this region is hot. And we can explain it in many, many ways. We like to also think about more cultural exchanges. And we've had Turkish Airlines, Qatar Airways, and British Airways increasing their intensity of flights to the region. What are they interested in? Are they trying to win our hearts and minds, or are they just trying to make money? And then we have the ever-elusive AFRICOM. Not to tickle everyone's brains a little bit, but counterterrorism funding has grown exponentially between 2005 and 2010. This may be one indicator of the fact that this region is being paid attention to. Everyone sees it as an important geostrategic asset. Now, Kenya is considered a frontline nation as part of U.S. anti-terrorism assistance, and ranks only behind Afghanistan, Jordan, and Pakistan, which was very, very interesting to me.
Knowledge and information, of course, is essential in the world we live in today, and the report we are launching here today aims to achieve and provide policymakers, civil society, private sector, and all of us in the East African region with the knowledge we need to effectively engage. African leaders and institutions in both the corporate world and the political arena are embracing policy convergence, good governance, and paying close attention to the dictates of sustainable development. The report that you have received this morning reemphasizes the fact that this is Africa's century. This Africa's century is truly upon us, and East Africa is the vanguard of that century. Regional integration must be acknowledged as the expression and critical feature of good governance, and I believe, from my vantage point, that sustainable regional integration is a critical element of the forward movement of our region within a highly competitive global economic system. And the people of East Africa have made it clear they expect no less. The strategic challenges identified in the report require deeper integration. That is the main message of the report from my vantage point. And indeed, East African integration is deepening. How can we collectively grow the skills base of our young population, unleash their creativity, expand the frontiers of entrepreneurship and innovation? Some of this growth, a lot of this growth, will come from within the region as firms invest across borders in such areas as cement production, financial services, tourism, manufacturing, infrastructure, energy development, and cross-border electrification programs.
So this, ladies and gentlemen, is the State of East Africa Report 2012. I'm going to sneak in. This is the young man who spent a lot of sleepless nights.
Africa is the fastest growing continent at the moment. It's 1.6 trillion GDP currently is expected to actually double in 8 years to 2.6 trillion by 2020. So it is a very, very fast growing continent. But the only way we're really going to realize all these results, I believe, is obviously through greater integration, and that's something we'd like to pursue. Europe currently enjoys about 64% internal trade of all its total trade. 64% is internal, which means that it originates from the countries of Europe. Our 21% is better than we had thought, but certainly something that we would like to grow a lot more in the future, and something that we need to be focusing on how to grow it, because from our perspective and from the perspective of business, this integration is going to be, is about trade, it's about commerce, it's about movement of goods and persons and movement of services. So we welcome this report from that perspective, but I'd like to now add my own sort of comments about how it is we can actually deepen this integration. The journey that East Africa has started on, the inspiration that it has become for the rest of Africa, is something that we need to continue to keep ahead of and work at. Now, how do we really deepen this integration? How do we deliver enhanced trade, enhanced movement of persons, enhanced coordination and collaboration between the people? As the report says, and as the Secretary General has mentioned, I don't think we can run away from the fact that this will be driven by infrastructure. You cannot have extensive relations with a neighbor if you cannot cross the fence to talk to them. That's a reality of this situation. And if we really want to look at it, the integration of the United States, we need to work on that a lot, and I certainly hope it is at the topmost agenda of the Secretary General to facilitate the infrastructure that will connect East Africans. The second thing that we really need to do as well is to build on the institutions that will facilitate convergence. If you don't have institutions of convergence, you will have very little movement of people or movement of goods. We struggle with that when it comes to movement of goods. Do we have the same standards? Do we have the same testing standards? By the time you declare this is a recorder in Kenya, has the Ugandan also, do they trust the testing process that declares that as a product that has a stamp of quality, and will they accept it or will they test it again? Because if they're going to test it again, there is no point going to that market, or at least if you just make it a lot more difficult. The third thing I think is also important, having faced it, is what is a question of trust, but the requirement, in my view, to have honest conversations, because integration brings many different institutions, many different peoples together with our different histories, with our different suspicions of each other. And a final point is, obviously I speak from a perspective of trade and movement of goods, but we also need to invest in other social connections, because this integration mustn't just be integration of business alone. We have been accused in the past that the EAC is driven by business interests, and I can confess that maybe it has been in the past. But in recent times, obviously, we've seen much more social interaction. The possibilities of expansion and integration through sports is something we should really think a lot more about. An East African League, for instance, an East African Marathon, for instance, are some of the things that we should probably think a lot more about, and I certainly hope that it is happening. And a final one, as we deepen our integration, I appreciate and we appreciate the interest that has been shown by other neighbors in the region. We have heard about Sudan, we've heard about Somalia applying. The conversation from the visit of the Ethiopian Prime Minister not so long ago suggested that they were looking keenly on this region. But the challenge for us is, are we going to expand too fast, that we're not able to, even before we have reached convergence within the 5 member states? We appreciate the political will and the intention of our leaders in showing the signals that yes, we would be welcome to consider this. But if you're an operator in East Africa and having the challenges in moving through these 5 countries, our advice would be, I think, even as we expand, we need to expand cautiously, because we need to deepen what we have. We need to build the convergences so that we're actually able to deliver something that works for its people. And as we continue to make greater intentions of expanding, we do it in a manner that at least we're able to embrace others as fully as possible.
I think what we should pursue is, how do we create those who want to take charge of East African integration? How do we create critical mass? And I think I agree with those who say we should not leave it to the politicians alone. It should be a people's program or a people's project. Because the integration of East Africa is more than bringing producers together or businessmen together. It is actually bringing our East Africans together who have been divided on a rational basis. This is the region where we have common people divided by different borders, which doesn't make sense. I didn't want to talk about informal trade. That's the testimony that people actually think the governments are obstacle to doing business freely. Because what they call informal fraud is what they call smuggling. The customer people call it smuggling. People are just doing business as they see fit. Those who know Uganda and Tanzania, we have a common border at Mutukula. On this side of Uganda, people had grown sugar cane, hoping that we were going to have the sugar mill in that area called Sango Bay. Across in Tanzania, there is Kagera sugar mill, but they don't have enough sugar cane. So Ugandans said, here is an opportunity to sell our sugar cane across into Tanzania, or to the Kagera mill which is in Tanzania. So the officials at the border said, no, before you cross any lorry of sugar cane, free of, which is actually free of share in terms as far as Tanzania is concerned, because they didn't invest any shilling in that production of the sugar cane. We are charged $200 per lorry. $200 per lorry. When we had a meeting, joint meeting, I said, what the logical explanation do you have for charging these people $200 per lorry? Because here is free sugar cane, sorry, to go and maintain a mill, sugar mill across it in Tanzania. So I think this is one of the things we should address. Getting critical mass of those who think integration of the East is a must. And I believe it is a must. This is my belief, it is a must. What we have done is really modest. Coming together in Arusha, having the treaty, a little trade, 21% intra-East African trade, with a lot of what they call non-tariff barriers. But now we are attracting attention. How do we move from now on? Do we expand or do we consolidate? One of the things that we should be careful about is the competition among ourselves. To say Uganda has more oil than Kenya, or Tanzania has more gas than the rest, I think that we should really strive not to have. Any new resource or resource should be for East Africa. We should look at it as East Africa and manage it as East Africa. Food security is an issue. It's going to be a strategic issue in the world, not in East Africa alone. There is now a new approach. Before, they were telling us grow the food and we buy it. Now they are saying we are coming to grow the food. This is the new approach. Because before, we grow the food, coffee, cotton, what? But now they are saying we are coming to grow the food on your land. Give us the land only. This is the new approach, in my view. It shows how the food security is going to be an issue. So the question is, can we individually as a country, Kenya, Uganda, on its own, Tanzania, Rwanda, on their own, be able to withstand these forces which are coming up with these new discoveries of the resources we are talking about? Is it possible? That's my answer is no. But power will move the economies if we do. Power, railway, these two factors, these two infrastructure, energy, railway. If you look out there, we were saying 95 were cargo is by road. Our roads last 2 or 3 years, and we don't have money to do more. See, I think somehow if your point becomes a problem, you even point ideas. Because if everybody thinks that you can move the cargo by road, 95, and you keep on it, and you see where we don't have money, then you see more vehicles, they need more fuel, things you don't have. In Europe, where who have money, more money, use railway to move bulk cargo rather than by road.
Ambassador Dr. Richard Sesibera, Right Honorable Kategaya, Ambassador Juma Mopachu, Betty Minor, Frank Matzart, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it gives us at Trademark East Africa great pleasure to witness the launch of the State of East Africa Report 2012. On a personal note, I'm very excited because the Society for International Development was one of the first grants we ever signed under the program that I head at Trademark. So this is a very exciting moment for our program. The Treaty of East African Community calls for full engagement and ownership of the process by the private sector and civil society. In this regard, the private sector and civil society program at Trademark is committed to supporting this cause and ensuring business and civil society are fully engaged and specifically in a position to positively influence areas of the regional integration process. To date, we have signed off on a number of grants focusing on capacity enhancement, evidence-based advocacy, technical assistance, and information dissemination. We hope that this will lead to a greater ownership of the process, a more informed business and civil society community, and East African citizenry.
My friends, this event here today is of historic importance to me. A year ago, later this month, my friend Richard Sesibera took over from me the onerous leadership of the Eastern Community as Secretary General. I'm proud of the able manner in which Richard has been able to jump into the deep end of the pool of EAC's integration demands and challenges. Well done, Richard. I think I will be repeating what many people have said here before, that the Eastern community continues to be a shining example of successful integration in East Africa. And I know that my friend Eria Kategaya, dampened the mood a little bit by saying that maybe too little, but I'm saying that too little is probably a lot insofar as the model of integration in in the whole of Africa is concerned. And I think we really need to recognize that the EAC really is truly a shining example of African integration today. Friends, it may be appreciated that SID's work is based on a fundamental value of being an honest broker in matters that touch on people's welfare and well-being. SID's fundamental ethos is to see that global society is driven by values of human dignity, respect, social justice, and above all, environmental sustainability. It is these values that we seek to share with the East African community in its quest to realize the objectives of its mantra, one people, one destiny.
And with those words, we come to the end of our program this morning. Thank you very much all for coming, and we look forward to seeing you at our next engagement. Kwaheri, and have a good rest of the week. Thank you.
No, report as usual is full of facts, as I said, full of figures, covers different fields from agriculture to human beings to education to road infrastructure, every information that you need on the trade, intra-trade, world trade of the region. So it is definitely informative and full of, I should say, facts which can guide us in our process of integration. Now, Uganda government is totally committed to integration. It is one of our biggest plank of policies, both in the economy and the foreign affairs. It is in the manifesto of our party. So, anything that helps us to make our argument better, we shall take it. So, I will make sure that those concerned will definitely consume it and get enough copies. Part of our problem actually is that we don't read much. And there are a few who read, so that's why I was saying we need to create a critical mass on those who are aware of about the problems and the imperative of integration. And we go on. Well, in Uganda, what we have been doing was to interest a number of civil society, what we call civil society, the universities, the traders, the youth, even the clergy, about the integration process. And of course, we have dialogue with our parliament to educate them about the benefits of integration and what to be done. So, this document, of whatever it is, I mean, I will send to those who have the capacity to read, who want to read, but it should be available. That's how I came to get attracted to you, because I found you have very good, valuable information in whatever you publish. Whatever you publish, so they continue. Let's every year have a new approach. Because as we move in integration, then we have new problems, and it's good to have a group of people who can study these problems and advise us what to do.
To put it in one word, I'll say very informative. Some of the things that we know, some of the things that we don't know, but it also gives a picture of where we have been, where we are to now, and sort of give us room to either imagine or prepare for what's coming. There's a lot of things that people need to know, East Africans need to know, so they can make better choices as far as integration is concerned. Yeah. So it should go to the Wananchi. To SID, I think the way forward looks bright. You know, there are many challenges, but as for the report itself, you've seen the many opportunities as well. So it gives us a platform, a larger platform to bring up these dialogues, to bring up conversation. And that's what I would say, that's what we need to do. So this message gets to as many people as it can get. Time brings changes, you know. And we've seen in the last 10 years what changes, whether good or bad, we've experienced in the region. So there's some policies that need changing. There's some policies that needs to be abolished. Others need to be amended.